will they or won't they? When it comes to North Korea, only a select few ever know the answer, although that never stops anyone from speculating. Joining us now to talk about a possible third nuclear test in North Korea is Daniel Pinkston, senior analyst with the International Crisis Group. Thank you very much for being here today.
Great to be here.
Let's cut right to the chase. If you had to put a percentage on the likelihood of a North Korean nuclear test in the coming days and weeks, what would it be, and when do you expect it'll happen?
I think it's very high. I would expect it to be about 90%, the probability. It could come at any time. As far as the preparations around the site, the rhetoric that's been expressed by the regime, they always have good timing to do this, a lot of dates coming up. So it could be any day.
90% is high. Why that high?
Well, I think this is something they really want to acquire. This is a capability they wish to have. They've demonstrated that for a long time. Over decades, it takes a lot of investment in time and resources, financial resources, personnel. There are political costs. However, it serves the regime internally, and they have continued to work on this program, and I think it's something that they really value.
We're in February now, a lot of key dates coming up. If I had to nail or narrow, basically get you on a specific date, roughly when do you think it might happen?
Well, I can't predict that, but according to their ideology and doctrine, every time is a good time, any day, all the time. Any time is a good time to demonstrate your military power. So I would think around Kim Jong-il's birthday is a good time. I don't think they'll do it actually on his birthday, because I think they want to celebrate that day. And a lot of people that are in the coalition, the scientists, the military, the engineers, they would have to work on that day, and the symbolism is important. So I don't think they'll do it at that time. But around President-elect Park Geun-hye's inauguration, which is Monday, the 25th of February, a good time would be the Friday before. However, they also might want to do it very close to the NATO launch that South Korea conducted on Wednesday the 30th. So they believe that the resolution, the UN Security Council resolution condemning their launch in December, their satellite launch, is hypocritical, and they would like to point that out. So they might want to keep it close to that date. They might want to do it around Park inauguration. They might want to wait later until Kim Il-sung's birthday or something like that. But I think sooner rather than later, much sooner rather than later.
A 90% chance, in your words, that it will happen, which means there's a 10% chance that it might not. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has said she is hopeful that the North will sort of back away from these plans. Where can we pin any hope on them not going through with this?
Well, I think if they stick to their thinking, their ideology, there's nothing that can turn them back if, in fact, they're ready in the technical terms. But I did hear, we have heard very recently that the Chinese have stepped up customs inspections to slow down trade on the border. And some are speculating this might be a signal from the Chinese that there will be significant economic costs to North Korea. So maybe that will lead them to reconsider a test, but I'm doubtful. I don't think China would really place a full embargo, an economic embargo on North Korea, because it could cause instability. And I think probably the leadership in Pyongyang believes they can ride this out. So even if there is a short-term economic cost, the value of these types of weapon systems are so great that it would outweigh any kind of economic costs.
Let's talk a little bit about China. China did get behind the UN sanctions this time around. They threw their support behind that. Did that surprise you in any way?
Well, some would argue that the resolution, UN Security Council Resolution 2087, is really more symbolic than containing any more additional measures. However, of course, North Korea has expressed a lot of displeasure. They seem to be very angry about it. And then, of course, it depends upon the implementation. So there are no real new instruments. There were a few entities and individuals that were named to the list. But as far as really squeezing them or adding additional costs, there are more things that the international community could do in terms of financial sanctions, some other things that could really hit the North Koreans hard. But at this point, there's still some restraint by the international community. China doesn't want to support those types of measures. But if there's a third nuclear test, then maybe they would support more punitive measures.
And you mentioned the customs checks, that being one sign that perhaps China's getting a bit impatient with Pyongyang over these constant provocations. Do you see a little bit of that impatience coming to the surface here?
Certainly. I mean, it's very clear that the Chinese are dissatisfied with these, if you want to call them provocations or belligerence or actions by North Korea, nuclear tests, satellite launches, anything that causes instability on the Chinese border or in the region causes a lot of problems for Beijing. They want peace and stability in the region so they can focus on their domestic issues and economic development and national development. And this is certainly a distraction. They don't want to deal with this. So they will send signals to North Korea. But the concern in Beijing is that if they squeeze too hard, then it could cause instability in North Korea. And this would exacerbate the problem, and so they want to avoid this. So China's also in a realm of very bad policy choices. They don't have any easy answers to this either.
And we always hear that Beijing has Pyongyang's ear. At this point, though, what sort of leverage do they have? I mean, how much leverage do they have in all of this?
I think on the outside, we tend to exaggerate that leverage, and in Beijing, they underestimate the leverage that they have. North Korea is going to do what they want to do. And in fact, I think with the recent resolution 2087, the North Koreans look at China as being against them as well. It's North Korea against the world. So I think this just validates in their mind the need for a nuclear deterrent, the need to acquire these types of systems. It's very worrisome and very dangerous, but I think they will stick to their game plan, this military first strategy.
The headlines last month when they made these threats were that North Korean nuclear test targets the U.S. No one really thinks seriously that the North Korean regime has any intention, at least not right now, to attack the U.S., of course. But there are all sorts of interpretations out there as to why they conducted this missile test in December, and now just 2 months later, probably a third nuclear test. What signs can we take from that, from these two big events?
Well, I think there was a little bit of confusion possibly in the awkward translation when they said they would target the U.S. with these tests. It did not mean that they were going to conduct their nuclear test on Guam, for example. However, what it means is the U.S. justifies the need for the tests and the need to acquire these systems. This is consistent with their ideology, this military first or Sungun ideology. They assume that the international system is menacing and that the U.S. is the core imperialistic power and that the U.S. seeks to enslave Koreans and that the only way to avoid this catastrophe is to acquire and maintain a robust, reliable nuclear deterrent. So they cannot be dissuaded from moving in this direction. The satellite launch has dual-use technologies. It serves multiple purposes for the regime. There's a military use, there's a space exploration use and as a satellite launcher. They do have legitimate interests in gaining access to outer space. Every country does. But they will certainly exploit the military aspect of it. The symbolism internally is very significant. I think on the outside people maybe underestimate that, but it really is valuable for the regime politically, internally. And then there's also the proliferation concern. Demonstrating these types of capabilities is an advertisement, if you will, for potential buyers abroad. North Korea is looking to earn hard currency, and through sales of these types of technology, they can do that as well.
I've also seen reports, though, that suggest that American intelligence officials are concerned that maybe Kim Jong-un is going to resort to some sort of confrontation to sort of solidify his power base in the North. Can we make anything of those concerns? Should they be concerned at this point?
I think there's always a concern. The system is opaque. it's very difficult to predict, make precision predictions. However, there's a long history of this type of behavior. It serves an internal purpose, rallying around the flag, if you want to say. If there's any instability or grumbling inside the regime, this is a way to rally support, particularly amongst the hardliners, and to deflect attention against shortcomings in the regime. So it's not a surprise, and they do it at a time of their choosing, a place of their choosing. They have a lot of things they can do. They have a lot of asymmetric capabilities that they can employ. So I think the best counter strategy, of course, is to be on guard and be prepared for any types of provocations or belligerence.
And by carrying out a nuclear test, what does Kim Jong-un have to gain? And in turn, what does he have to lose by carrying out a nuclear test?
Well, it depends how you look at this. From their thinking and from a military first strategy, they really only see benefits. You're acquiring a military capability that makes you powerful. They believe that by acquiring these types of capabilities, it's the key to achieving other state goals. So whether it's in terms of foreign policy, inter-Korean relations, or economic development, this is an important and necessary step. So this is what they focus on. But for the rest of the world who doesn't follow Sungun ideology, we realize there's a cost, because most of the world pursues goals and interests through cooperation and collaboration with partners and allies and friends in the world who have similar interests. And I think that's a superior strategy. We see countries around the world that achieve much more and have many more accomplishments than North Korea does. So they're looking in a completely different way, and they don't think of the opportunity costs or what things they will give up and what the international community might impose in terms of costs. I think they look at places like Pakistan, for example, or maybe India, and think that, well, people will acquiesce, they will come to accept us as a nuclear power. They realize there are short-term costs, but they think it's worth it. They look at other examples like Libya or Iraq under Saddam Hussein and say, look, they probably wish they had a robust nuclear deterrent. We're still here, they are not. So they have a lot of ways they can justify and validate this thinking, even though they pay a tremendous cost. And the regime, they can pass off these costs to the population. The ruling elite lives relatively well in Pyongyang.
As you said earlier, North Korea against the world, which takes us back to the sanctions a little bit here and the relationship with the rest of the world. Professor Charles Armstrong of Columbia University recently penned a column for CNN basically saying that the UN Security Council resolutions, the sanctions, are not effective, that it's resulting in a more provocative, more aggressive North Korea. He advocates a little more carrot, a little less stick. What is your take on that? Do you agree with that?
Yes and no. I would agree that the sanctions and pressure, the likelihood of having the intended outcome of North Korea reconsidering and abandoning their WMD ambitions is virtually zero. Nevertheless, I don't think we should abandon the sanctions regime. I think there has to be some cost. And even if it's not effective with North Korea, there are third parties who are looking at this as well. And I think that's the wrong signal to send to the rest of the world. If North Korea can engage in this type of behavior with impunity, then other parties will see that and can embark on their own nuclear programs and expect the same kinds of treatment. So the Irans of the world, other countries, particularly in the Middle East, that might be looking to acquire nuclear capabilities and missile capabilities, which certainly North Korea would be willing to sell to any buyers in that part of the world. I think that's the wrong signal to send.
Successful rocket, we think, missile launch back in December, a third nuclear test coming up, most people agree. The question, I guess, would be, the broader question with the sanctions and the relationship is, have the sanctions even worked? I mean, what have they done if these two big events have taken place regardless?
Well, even though sanctions regime, your non-proliferation efforts, your export controls, your counter-proliferation efforts, even though they're not perfect, they have not prevented North Korea from conducting these tests and acquiring these capabilities. Nevertheless, you have to slow them down as best you can. It could be worse. We have to target choke points or what have you to cut off certain technologies. It's kind of depressing when you think about it, considering that they continue to embark upon the development of these systems. But I think we have to continue to make efforts. We have to continue to seek diplomatic solutions, talk to the Koreans, but we can't be naive about it. Look for any signs of a change in their orientation. And if we can find a peaceful solution, that would be wonderful. But in the meantime, I think we have to maintain our containment and deterrent posture, and the export controls, non-proliferation efforts have to be stepped up.
Let's say the nuclear test does in fact take place in the coming days or weeks. We of course don't know. What is the fallout going to be?
I think it's very dangerous, very worrisome. I think it's not only a regional problem, it's a global problem. We look at the cooperation with Iran, particularly in missiles. There's a very strong incentive for them to cooperate in this area. They've signed scientific agreements. There's been a lot of collaboration there. I've heard sources telling me about collaboration on reentry vehicle for missile warhead. We look at the pictures of the missiles that they've displayed. It looks like they have a similar warhead design. Scientific agreement that they signed recently when Kim Jong-nam, the president of the Supreme People's Assembly, was in Tehran and was meeting with the president. The head of their Iranian nuclear agency was there with him. They signed a scientific exchange agreement and so forth. So I think if North Korea were to conduct a nuclear test, I don't know, but there's a worry that they could share the data, the information with Iran, and Iran could become a virtual nuclear weapon state. They could provide cash to North Korea, which would be very valuable for the regime. They need hard currency. So it could have global effects, and it could embolden North Korea to engage in other provocative actions. They could view the nuclear capability as a shield that would embolden them to take conventional actions along the DMZ or at the NLL, for example, or inside South Korea, sending special forces. There are a number of things that they could do, and if they have a nuclear weapons arsenal, it just increases the complexity of the problem.
The South Korean government basically this week said there would be grave consequences if North Korea carried out a third nuclear test. If you were advising the South Korean government, they're in an unenviable position, of course. What would you advise them to do in response to a third nuclear test?
Well, everyone is, not just the South Korea. It's a very grave threat to South Korea, but to the world as well. I think there has to be some serious discussion about more punitive measures. There are some things that could be done that would really raise the cost for North Korea. I'm not in government, so it's for people within government to decide at the highest levels, but I think there has to be some consideration of additional measures.
But if you were advising them hypothetically, what would those measures entail exactly?
Well, there are some things that could be done that could be risky, and it could trigger violent responses possibly from North Korea. So you have to weigh those the likelihood of that. But one thing, for example, is imposing sanctions on shipping. And I've heard some discussion about this, where particularly the United States or others, kind of a coalition of the willing, could implement orders, executive orders or laws that would ban the insurance for North Korean flagged ships, for example, or cargoes. So if they were to freeze the assets of insurance companies, they would not insure the North Korean ships. They would walk away from it. And without insurance, ships and cargoes cannot enter into port. the port master, they won't let you come in. So if they want to go into Singapore, they want to go into Hong Kong, Dalian, and so forth, they would be shut out of the ports. Now, basically, that could be considered economic warfare or an act of war, a complete economic embargo. So you have to be very careful about that. But that's kind of I guess, an economic sanctions, death penalty or nuclear option to try to completely shut down their trade. It would have a humanitarian effect and so forth. It might have unintended consequences. But there are some things also in terms of other financial sanctions that you could target the regime or the ruling elite, their assets. So I think there's some thinking and discussion going on about this. So we'll see what transpires.
You don't sound very hopeful about North-South relations improving anytime soon.
No, I don't. Some people are doing some work on this. I think we have a historical record now of dealing with this problem and dealing with North Korea almost 20 years now, going on 25 years. And I think a lot of smart people have worked very hard on this, and they've tried a number of solutions with negative security assurances, some kind of diplomatic recognition, and some kind of material incentive, and packaging that in all kinds of ways: aid, trade, lifting sanctions, diplomatic relations, a peace treaty, however you want to package it. It has been packaged in many different ways, and it just hasn't worked. We tried a hawkish containment policy, a hardline policy. We've tried soft, dovish engagement policy. But the only thing that remains constant is North Korea's determination to continue working on these programs. So I'm supportive of anything that works, anything that's going to reverse this program, or their WMD programs and missile programs. So we can look back and see what is effective, what's been more effective or not. Unfortunately, it seems that nothing has been really effective. And people in South Korea and abroad, people who are pro-engagement or pro-containment and have a more hawkish policy, they beat each other up saying it's the wrong policy and it's pushed North Korea to take certain actions. But I think the responsibility lies in Pyongyang, and it's their thinking. And so regardless of what we do on the outside, if the variables driving their decision-making are in Pyongyang, there's really nothing we can do. We don't have any traction over it. And I think that's probably the case. They move according to their thinking and their timetable. So then we just have to slow them down as much as we can.
No easy answers, that is for sure. Daniel Pinkston, we thank you very much for being on the program today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you, as always, for watching. We'll see you next week after 10.